Dan Le Batard's idea is horrible for Washington.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports' It's Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thanks for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKDOWNCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Lars, we've got a really fun show coming out all day every day today. We're going to be talking some defensive back recruiting later on. We've got some questions about guys like Devon Benjamin. I want to talk about Chace Calicut a little bit, a couple of four-star prospects there, and a couple other really, really intriguing guys whose film I love. I know you're really high on as well, but we'll get there because this is going to require a little patience and a lot of self-control, I think, for both of us, because we're going to be talking a lot about Washington's fan base in this episode and the crowd at Husky Stadium, which you and I love, and we think it's going to have a lot of fun in 2025 with some of the opponents that are going to be making their way to Montlake. But Lars, Dan Le Batard, who is somebody you and I both love, respect, admire, have watched the show for a long time, he said the future of sports doesn't require fans in the stadium, which is not only an insane and honestly, in my opinion, horrible take, but that would kill Washington more than, honestly, just about any other program in the country.
Yeah, well, weirdly enough, and I'm sure I'll have you read the quote here, the full quote here in a minute here, but the fact that he also said, like, you don't even have to have, like, live sports. Like, the insinuation was almost like it doesn't even have to be, like, appointment television. You're just looking for programming. It's like basically the insinuation that I took from it was you and I talking like this is just as important as a live sporting event. And I was like, I don't know how that lands. Like, I covered the 2020 COVID season at Husky Stadium. By the way, love the parking. Like, I love that side of it. Like, that was that's awesome. That was like pulling right up to the stadium on game day will never be beat. Driving home in 20 minutes after the game will never be beat. But beside that, everything else sucked. Yeah. Like there was having fans in the stadium, aside from, navigating them and dealing with all those sorts of things, but there's a aura that exists in sports through fans that cannot be replicated just by throwing on, an old game. I mean, how many times do you go and watch Root Sports and say, hey, there's a game from, 2005 on? Cool. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's programming. But no one cares as much as the current live game.
So I'm so glad you said that, because I'm not even going to go on a Red Sox fan tangent here where I can talk about going to the 2018 World Series and what that experience was like as a fan, but I want to. But I'm going to, first, let's read the quote before I get to this. Le Batard said, I will keep saying to you guys that the future of sports doesn't require fans to be in attendance. And it doesn't even require fans to be watching on television. It's just all programming. The television streamers need the programming. Sports is one of the few places where people tune in at the appointed time. Like there's so few right now. What are they? All right. I hate this so much. I truly cannot even begin to express how much I hate this. Where, Lars, let's take it back to 2023, because I quoted the Awful Announcing article. Shout out to them. They do great work over there. And I quoted it with a video that it will honestly forever live on in the memories of both you and me. Anybody who's in attendance that day, the 71,000 people who watched Camden Lewis's field goal just sink to the right, all of that. I shout out to Coke greater than Pepsi. He does a great job pointing this out on Twitter every time that video pops up. You could hear a pin drop in those 2-3 seconds, whatever it was, where the ball was in the air. And that crowd pop, because that's what I wanted to get to in terms of just all of this, that crowd pop, the second that you see and you hear and you feel the student section watch that kick float to the right and you realize what just happened, everything like that is what makes sports so magical. And there are few, if any, places in the country that do that as well as Husky Stadium. When you and I are sitting in the press box and people who, wear their boots start banging on the upper decks up there and you feel the press box start to rattle, you feel what it feels like inside Husky Stadium. You know that it reached 130 decibels that day. You know that Washington holds the record in terms of total decibels at 133.6 with with everything else that went on in the 90s. that is something that cannot be replicated in anything. And it takes a lot of the excitement out of sports. Washington could have been the number one team in the country and won the national championship, which would have been really special during that COVID shortened season and everything like that. It wouldn't have felt nearly as special as what that 2023 run was, because Lars, during the inaugural, season of this podcast, you and I would come back and record our live shows and do everything after every home game, and our ears would still be ringing half the time, because that was just how amazing the experience was. And that's without even getting into the fact of, hey, the field storming after Oregon, the field storming after Wazoo, which are special and amazing in their own right. But that is what sports is all about. It's all about the fans. It's all about that passion. And if you don't have fans in the stadium for all that, it's not the same, and it never would be.
And not to make this because I was going to say Washington podcast, so we have to tie it into Washington, but I'll tie it into the Big Ten in general. What's the whiteout without fans?
Yep.
Yeah, you got the Penn State players wearing a white. There is the other side.
They're not even wearing white; they wear blue.
Exactly, but white helmets or whatever you want to say, white pants or whatever. But I'm sure there's another white theme in there somewhere. I'm sure, But beside that, it's about the fans. And same thing like because again, I think you're referencing my not to do a self pop there, but just the sideline video that we had on the at the end of the Oregon Washington game, where you could hear it, and it's there's just something like that. That's why I said aura. There's an aura that exists in a stadium. It's Bryce. You'll hate this, but maybe you won't. Bryce Harper's ALC or NLCS or home run, and then the grand slam walk off, and it's that aura when you have the Moby song as he's walking up, and you can just hear, and it's just like that doesn't exist. Like, yeah, that's still a dope home run if you have no fans in attendance, but there's so much more to it. There, when you talk about the future of Husky fandom and all the recruits that we talk about from that Oregon game. We'll bring it back to Washington. Yeah. That Oregon game. How many recruits have we talked to said, oh, by the way, I came up for that game. Oh, by the way, I came up for that. Even in the 2025 and 2026 class, I remember that Oregon game. And it's or that 23 game. And it's that was a benchmark game. That was a clear indicator. You gotta have fans that matter. How many kids do we talk to where it's, man, that atmosphere, the Washington fans, the Washington community, the Washington fans, you're citing fans. Clearly fans matter on some level here.
Let's talk about that with the 2026 class. The Michigan game last year. Another great example of that, where everybody's so I completely understand and acknowledge and respect maybe I'd be priced out of a game. That's one thing. Getting priced out, especially at the professional level, is a different issue and something that, look at what the Clippers are doing with their new Intuit Dome and how expensive it is and all that. That's a separate issue and a separate discussion, which I respect and understand. But for anybody who might be out there saying virtual reality will make this better. If there are no fans in the stadium, who cares what the VR experience might look like? I don't care if I'm getting to watch with the NBA where they do watch courtside or college football, watch from right there on the sidelines on the field, where the view you and I had of Roma Dunze's touchdown in that Oregon game. That'd be magical. That'd be really cool for anybody who is watching on a VR headset or in one of those, like the domes that they have for all that. But none of that works if there aren't fans. That is all just absolutely ridiculous. It's so silly. That's the only way to put it, is everything in sports comes back to the fans. And Washington, especially when everything is going right, and we saw it in the 2023 season, has one of the best fan bases in the country. And taking that away from Husky Stadium especially, which has been designed to make it louder and make the experience even more special and more entertaining, it loses a lot of what fans are passionate about and getting that experience and going to the games.
If you took out fans, what do you think the honest impact of viewership would be? It's I might watch that game, I might just watch a 20-second highlight clip at the end of the day. It's if you don't have you're talking about empathy for sports in general at that point. If you don't have fan engagement, that's the whole point. How much do we get on this podcast and UW fans in our Twitter mentions say hey, I wish UW did this or I wish UW did that. It's all about fan engagement. If you don't have fan engagement, you don't have a product. Let's just be real.
Lars, with that being said, some of the opponents that are going to be at Washington 2025 are going to make that experience so special. But we'll get to that right after a message from our friends over at Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com and right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. We've also got a message from our friends over at Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first step, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online or right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes. In many cases, no health exam is required. As a parent, you want to make sure your family is financially protected no matter what happens. Fabric gives you that peace of mind. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day, so protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockdowncollege. That's MEET fabric.com/lockdowncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Lars, last year was fun at Husky Stadium, coming off of 2023, which is just unrivaled with all of the experiences and everything that was going on with that season in terms of what the atmosphere was at Husky Stadium. But 2025, it's going to be a lot of fun because not only do you have the defending national champions coming in for a second year in a row with Ohio State, you've got Oregon coming to town, and honestly, one of the biggest sleepers in the Big Ten in Illinois as well, on top of a typical home schedule. And, one of the reasons we wanted to make sure we talked about this following up a little bit so we can continue our conversation from a little earlier. But I just think that with DeMond Williams and everything that is going to be going on with this team this year, it's going to be so much fun to be at Husky Stadium this season.
I'm going to tie this first segment into the second one. Dan Le Batard actually sent Lucy Roden to Husky Stadium in 23. You wouldn't do that if the fans and atmosphere didn't matter. She had a whole thing about the sailgating.
It was great. Yeah, I remember that.
Wasn't Coker involved in that, or Coker met her? Or something?
Shout out to Insider Joe. He was involved in that.
Okay, I knew one of the insiders, but I just couldn't remember if it was Coker or not. But exactly, that was. Let's start with the obvious one. I think the Ohio State game and the fact that it's in September, that's the benchmark game for me. Because the Michigan game came in early October after you had to go the Rutgers debacle and all those sorts of things. So now you get to kind of set the tone. You should start 2-0 at home, and then you go to Wazoo, and then you come back home for Ohio State. If you can beat Ohio State, imagine what the next game at Husky Stadium is going to be like with the fans. Right. That is going to, it'll be unrivaled if they beat Ohio State. But I think even more so, you're going to see, a different Husky Stadium and a different Husky fan base in Husky Stadium if you're able to beat Ohio State, because it gives you so much confidence in the fan. Wow, my team actually just beat the defending national champions twice in a row. Imagine if you're a Washington fan. What fan base can say that? Right. Aside from Georgia, Bama, I guess one of those two. That's pretty much it. And then Washington.
So we owe anybody who's listening to this a massive apology that we're at 14 minutes and 30 seconds on this little timer that we got recording, and we haven't mentioned that Washington has the second longest home winning streak at 20 games in a row. That is 100% on us. We are really, really sorry. So
we're so used to them winning at home, we don't even mention it anymore.
It's true. I was gonna say something as a jinx involving this show and the winning streak, but we're not gonna go down that road because that's my history of jinxes and everything. I can't say that, but you think about what that could be, because I love the points you made there about just being able to set the tone if you are able to win that Ohio State game, and what that does for the rest of the season with Illinois coming to town, but some of the other just matchups you have before you get to Oregon at the end of the year. And it's just so much fun, because I got to take it back to what and what I was saying earlier about our ears ringing while doing the show. That's just part of the special experience of Husky Stadium. And you and I have high expectations for this team this season. You understand, we had high expectations last year as well. They didn't live up to, 8-4, which is what we both predicted the record would be in 2024. And we were wrong. That's what it is. A lot of things went wrong. But I know, some of the little things, we don't need to go down that road today. But I look at it and I just kind of say, if Washington is able to revive itself and go, let's just say 9-3 or 10-2. I know that those are our benchmarks you've set for this team. The atmosphere at Husky Stadium in year 2 of Jedd Fisch in the Big Ten, knowing that there's an expanded college football playoff and you might have a legitimate shot to reach it. If, some of the things we talked about yesterday with the ball bouncing the right way with luck and different things like that, the atmosphere at Husky Stadium is going to be just absolutely incredible.
Well, what's nice is when you look at the schedule, there's no back-to-back road game. That's also kind of worth noting, because you look at it and think, when you have those wins at home, you don't have a lull of like, oh, okay, now we got to go to Camp Randall, and then we got to go to Champaign, and then we got to come back for Rutgers or whatever. You're going every other one, and I think that's important because also, let's be real, like you don't want to take the schedule for granted. But man, does it set up nice. Like, you're talking about the aside, you have Oregon at the end, but then you also have Purdue, and you got, Illinois, I think is Illinois is good. They're good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like taking them for granted in that sense, but you look at it and compared to what it has been in years past, like that's like compared to last year, especially when you have to go to the road, Indiana, Oregon, Penn State, we don't have to relive all that. There's an added benefit to this schedule. I know we kind of talked about it a little bit on yesterday's show, where you think, like, why not? Like, there's no reason to not, be invested, get involved, show up to the game. And I don't know what ticket prices are. Sorry, I haven't really looked in a long time. I don't. This not really bother me. But from what I know, it doesn't seem like that would, like, when we're talking about pricing pans out and things like Washington fans showed in 2023, that ticket is worth whatever you want to pay, because the good product that you're going to come and see. And I think that's why you have an NFL coach like Jedd Fisch, Damon, all the defensive changes that they made. Ryan Walters facing his former school. All these sorts of things coming into play. Like, there's all these little narratives that are fitting into the season. And I don't know, it just seems like there's something special brewing on Montlake. Hi, Christian.
No, I couldn't. That's fantastic. We love Christian Cable here on this podcast. No, I couldn't agree with you more, because you think of it's something that I like to go back to, because I'm excited to have some of these conversations over the summer. Might have a couple of special guests on to talk some 26 NFL draft stuff if things fall the right way. So keep an eye out for that. But you look at some of the talent that this roster has that is draft eligible this season. You think about Jonah Coleman, who Pro Football Focus says is the number 4 best running back in the country. Denzel Boston, who if things go the right way for him this season, he could have a legitimate argument to be the best wide receiver in the 2026 NFL draft, because it really hasn't had anybody assert themselves as that guy just yet. And then Tacario Davis, who I legitimately believe is the best cornerback in the country. These are huge pieces that Jedd has. And then you think about how you went out and you addressed the dire need that you had on the offensive line and the defensive line, where you bring in 5 bodies in terms of total on both lines, plus the 3 linebackers that you brought in. You revamped the front 7, and you understood, hey, these are things we need to do in order to compete in the Big Ten, where it was very obvious the longer the season went on last year that wasn't the case. And a lot of that was due to the way the roster was constructed, not necessarily to the fault of the coaching staff. It was more the situation they were put in with not having a winter transfer portal to work with and not having some of those other things. And these sound like excuses, but they are legitimate things that make it harder to build a roster. So that's why we're so excited about what this team could be this season, because we've seen so much success at Washington over the last, let's just call it 10 years. If you want to really go back to after Chris Peterson had really laid his own foundation, to use your favorite term there, that there's no reason to expect that Washington cannot be successful in the Big Ten. It's one of the reasons you and I were both so excited about this move when it happened, because there is so much potential at Washington when it's all realized, and the fan base and the crowd and everything that goes along with it from the city of Seattle all comes along with it. And it's just so special when things are going well.
It really is, and it's also unrivaled in the sense of, there's nothing in Seattle sports aside from maybe the Seahawks when they were the Super Bowl run in the early 2010 range.
Sure.
But it's like the cracking games are cool, everything is cool, but there's just something. Again, I'm going to keep using this word, aura. There's an aura about Husky Stadium, the sailgating, everything involved with it. Like, it's a destination. It's why Washington. It's a destination school. It's a destination place. Seattle's a destination city. Honestly.
No, I love where you're going with that. And Lars, I'm sure that holds true for some of the recruits in this 2026 class. And we'll get to that right after a message from our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKDOWNCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKDOWNCollege for half off your first year.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
So Lars, this 2026 class is really fun in the secondary. Got a couple of commits already in Kasani Giles and Elijah Durr. You and I are both expecting CJ Lavender, when he announced his commitment on Friday, to choose Washington. Shout out to the 247 Crystal Ball for that. So that leaves at most, let's say, 2 spots in the secondary. And there are a whole bunch of guys that could take those. And I think we need to start with somebody who we haven't talked a whole lot about this podcast, because it feels like Washington is the sleeper for him right now. And that's 4-star safety Chace Calicut.
There's always a guy from Texas, my guy. Like, there's always somebody from Texas. And I think when you look at, especially how safety's lining up, where Kasani Giles could, nickel, Husky, safety, whatever you want to call him at this point,
sure,
doesn't preclude an all-out safety. And I think that's what Chace Calicut is. And you look at the size, I mean, my guy, 6'3", 190, and I don't know if you've seen the Rivals clips yet. I used to be the publisher of Rivals, so shout out Rivals. But he made some nice plays. I think it was like OT7 or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, he's such a fluid mover.
And I think that, like, when you think about the Husky safeties, like, I know you're a big fan of Sean Parker. Obviously, he's not exactly Shaq Thompson, but you had, I'm not going to say Buddha because it's obvious, but you go down the list of Husky safeties, that the size checks right out, where, kind of could be what they thought Asa Turner would be in his career at Washington with that size.
No, I absolutely love that, because you look at just who you're competing against for him. It's the big dogs, right? It's Texas, it's Michigan. I know there was a tweet out there where it said Alabama, Ole Miss, and Oregon are also trying to set up official visits with him. So the fact that I mean, it's saying that they were the third team to do it sounds kind of silly, but the fact that you did it before those schools does say a lot about the relationship you were able to build with him, and that's really exciting. That's really enticing, and I just love the way, even though Vinny Sunseri is out the door, and they've any chance at Roland Womack, this is gone with him, the way that Taylor Mays and John Richardson and Ryan Walters are recruiting in the secondary is a lot of fun to watch. And I think that this is a name and a recruitment that I really want to watch, because you pair a guy like that with, just to go from the 2025 class with Ryland Dillard Allen, man, that's a really fun secondary. And that's without mentioning Raheem Wright, who's a really fun athlete. That's without mentioning Rashawn Clark, without mentioning some of these other guys who have really found a way to carve out a role in that secondary, plus CJ Christian, plus Alex McLaughlin, where CJ Christian would be graduated by that point, but Alex McLaughlin would still be around in 2026. So there's really a lot to like about what the secondary could look like. And we can have the Devon Benjamin conversation for a couple seconds. We've got a whole bunch of questions about him. It does feel like they're not necessarily at the front of the pack like it felt like they might have been even a month ago, but this is somebody that you're going to continue to try pushing for until signing day.
Well, it's an example of you bring him up for the Ohio State game. Just have him come up for an unofficial, or even an official, whichever one you want to call it, because this is a recruitment where it just screams like Washington's always going to be the sleeper of the offseason. Always is going to be the outside looking in the and that's no slight to Washington, but it's just like look at all the guys committed to USC right now. How many of you think are going to sign with USC? I don't think as many as they're currently committing to USC. So with that being said, watch the season play out. Get to mid-October where we had the Dijon Lee conversation last year, which is, hey, maybe he's having second thoughts. Just kind of give him a reason to keep thinking about you. And I think that's exactly what John Richardson and now Taylor Mays are going to keep doing, because we haven't seen Taylor be an on-field position coach at the college level yet. We haven't seen what his safeties could look like. But now once you get into that mold, and same thing with Vinny, where we think he's going to be good, but you got to see it first. I can kind of speak it into existence, but it's still, you got to show it first. And so I think once they start putting it together on the field with Ryan Walters' defense, then you might have some other, like Devon Benjamin is that perfect guy, maybe Derek Johnson too, where you look at it and say, let's circle back on this one. Let's see if we can't rekindle. Let's see, are you sure you're not interested? Are you sure? I think once you see, like, again, if you beat Ohio State, that opens the door for a lot more conversations for recruits. It's like, oh, wow, Washington just beat Ohio State. And, man, look at that fan base. And look at the fans in the stands, too. Oh, my gosh. Like, I could not imagine. Yeah, anyway.
Look at you putting a bow on it like that. No, that was beautiful. That was perfect. I love that. So I'm really excited to talk about this next guy who I think we have criminally underrated on this show. And by that, I mean we just haven't really talked about him. And that's 3-star Mission Viejo cornerback Jeron Jones. I got a chance to watch his film. I just wrote a little something about him over on Huskies Wire. And I was like, oh, this kid is the John Richardson cornerback, where, we watch Ramon Adams in the 2025 class. We watch Darian Clemens, Dylan Robinson, and you see it, right? And this guy really falls into that mold of he's big. I know he's listed at 6 foot 165. So it's a really nice frame. And the two things that pop out, the first one is just his aggressiveness at the line of scrimmage, where you love press corners. And it's very clear that he played with, to bring up a name you mentioned a minute ago, played with Dijon Lee, who at 6'4", 190 is just an alien in terms of that size and doing what he's able to do. But Jeron Jones clearly learned a lot from having him as a teammate. So that's something that you really do like to see in that regard. And then on top of that, he's so physical in run support. And it's something that you and I have talked about with Kasani Giles. It's something we've talked about with CJ Lavender, where it's, hey, you need these guys who are unafraid to come downhill and hit in this conference. And it's an unfair comparison to make because there aren't a lot of guys who do it and then obviously go on to be a top 5 pick in the draft in Devon Witherspoon, where you look for that level of aggressiveness when coming downhill. And I regret even bringing his name up because it's an unfair comparison to make, but that's just the attitude, that mentality that you look for. And Jeron Jones really does have that. And is somebody who you look at just, I want to say the uncertainty of this room moving forward, because it's Takario Davis and Sufficient Sprasock this year. We know that. But beyond that, it's, hey, it looks like Dylan Robinson is somebody who you can rely on, maybe Leroy Bryant, who got to start in the Sun Bowl. But then behind that, is Darian Clemens going to step up? Is Caleb Presley going to step up? Ramon Adams, whoever it might be, there's a lot of room to come in and assert yourself right away on the outside.
I'm just surprised. I mean, you took my route when I make the Devon Witherspoon comparison way too much. Trent McDuffie. Again, a little bit taller, but not by much. I mean, Trent's what, 5'10", 5'11", Jeron 6 foot. I mean, you're talking an inch or two difference there, but they play the exact same physical way where you can put him outside. He's going to be solid in run support, all those sorts of things. And it's always Washington. And if you actually remember, Trent was the one that followed, I think, was it Chris Steele or some other 5-star that came before him? I can't remember exactly. I think that was the order.
Sounds about right.
It's similar where it's like, hey, you didn't get the guy, but really in the end, you did get the guy. Like that's, I think, how this works, and especially Mission Viejo. Plenty of guys that come from Mission Viejo to Washington. A couple didn't work out, but it's still a good school to come from, and I think that's exactly what the whole program is built on, where you're getting good established high school players, and we're just refining them at Washington at the college level while continuing to win, because Mission Viejo is a winner, just like Washington.
So let's talk about one more guy in that light who looks a lot like Kasani Giles and CJ Lavender when you turn on the film. It's a similar size and a similar just aggressive mentality. And I'm really curious about it because they're always going after one of these Texas guys, right? Obviously, we talked about Chace Calicut off the top. We're going to finish the Texas guy as well in Ryan Gilbert, where former Texas A&M commit is just so much fun to watch because he's got such a just hard-hitting mentality. I'm going to play in the nickel. I'm going to come downhill, and I'm going to fill my gaps effectively, and I'm going to make a play, which is so much fun to watch. And watching him just really shows what this coaching staff is looking for in the secondary. And I'm curious to see if he ends up being one of those guys that will commit on his official visit, because there are so many guys in that mold right now. And I'm not saying that to knock him or anything, but it's just, I'm curious how that would work out if you end up having a class with Sonny Giles, CJ Lavender, and Ryan Gilbert in it, because their skill sets are all very, very similar. And I'm just interested to see how, if that ends up being part of the class, how Ryan Walters would use all those guys.
It would be a significant statement if they do end up getting his commitment before his other two officials to Oklahoma and SMU. Like, if you can take a kid out of Texas over Oklahoma and SMU is getting, again, they're rising back up, so they're no longer, it's SMU. It's like, they're a real player here. So if you can get a kid from the Midwest, especially out of Texas, over both those schools after his visit, that's when you start planting your, no pun intended, flags. Like that's when you start making real statements before the season.
Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank all everydayers tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. We got so much more fun stuff coming for you throughout the offseason. So please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel through content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you don't miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us 5-star reviews. It does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Thursday.